Yo. Before I get started today, I wanted to say a thank you to people who are watching these videos. I got married last month. It was amazing. But I was away from my video making apparati and couldn't post a lot of videos. That's really bad for the algorithm, so I thought I was gonna, not really have many views at all for my last video, and it ended up being one of my more popular videos, even though I had taken like a month off from putting out any content. So thank you guys for showing up to that. It was one of my favorite videos. It's called Is Reiki a Scam? If you haven't seen it already, really proud of it. Yeah, so again, thank you guys. So today I want to get right into another thing that I think about a lot, and that is the idea of, do you need to believe in Reiki in order for it to work? So if you watched the last video and you've kind of been paying attention, I've mentioned a few times now that Reiki doesn't really work on someone who actively is saying to themselves, this isn't going to work. If they're forcing themselves or not allowing themselves to feel any other emotional state or any other energetic state than the one they're feeling, Reiki can't force them into feeling differently. It just won't work. And I've had that happen, I think, only once. And the person shared with me afterwards that they really had no intention of, letting it work. So when we think about belief, most people, I think, rightly, because of its impact on the world, think of religion. And the way that belief works with religion is that you are introduced to dogma. You're introduced to either the text of the religion or the ideas of the religion through someone telling you about them or preaching it. And you're encouraged to think certain thoughts about it, right? That's the essence of a belief, is it's a habitual thought, or it's a pattern of thought. Similarly, in science, we use evidence and proof in order to create ideas of truth within the scientific field, bodies of knowledge. And some people, I would say particularly people who have been doing science a little too long, can sometimes have habitual beliefs about some findings. That's actually how you kind of get schools of thought within scientific fields. So similarly to religion, where it's a pattern formed by repeat exposure and repeat encouragement to think a certain way about it, if you have an attachment to scientific findings, or you have an attachment to certain theories of science, you can dogmatically also believe in them. In terms of, when you think of these practices, you think, well, this is how it is. This is how the universe is, rather than, I would say, the true axiom of science, which is, this is just what we know right now. As an experiment 1 or 2 years from now could prove all of this wrong or prove it different than what we thought about it. So what I'm hoping to show by those two examples of belief with religion and science is that both are ultimately malleable. You can say that, like, well, my religion is formed because of my acknowledgement of truth, and that may be true if you've looked at different religions and you found one that resonates with you, and fair enough, but most people are part of a religion because it was part of the culture that they grew up in. And in that regard, just like scientific truth is malleable in the sense that new findings can disprove or change beliefs that we have about scientific principles, so too can your incarnation spot and time affect what your religious beliefs are and your cultural beliefs are. So, what is then the foundation that we should rely upon? Because if beliefs are all malleable in one form or another, what then is the foundation of ourselves, right? Because what are ourselves but just beliefs about who we are, right? Well, the foundation of it was discovered, it's been discovered many times, I'm sure, especially personally by people as we've evolved as a species, but one guy really looked into it, a guy named Rene Descartes. Yes, I have a philosophy major. Descartes was a 1600s philosopher, And you may know him by his most popular work towards the later end of his life, where he wrote a whole book, he wrote 2 books actually, on the topic of cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. And I will spare you even the cliff notes on those books. They're really good, don't get me wrong. I think one of them is called like The Principles of Philosophy, and I think the other is Modern Philosophy. I could be completely wrong about that. I haven't like read those books in forever. That being said, I think that his findings are correct. I think if you really boil everything down past your feelings and all your ideas and everything like that, the only thing that we know for certain is that we think, and that ultimately that's a good foundation for the idea of our existence. We know that we exist because we think, and we can question our existence. I totally believe in that, and I think because of that, we have to accept that thought itself is one of the, if not the most powerful driving factor in our lives. I mean, even the feelings that we have about ourselves or about the world or about people in our world are all coded to us through thoughts, how we think about them, right? So the idea of ourselves comes from our thoughts. And if you don't like something about yourself, if you don't like a feeling that you have, or you don't like an illness that you're suffering from, or you don't like the state of a relationship that you're in, the best way to change these circumstances is through thought. It starts with thought. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like if you have something really wrong, like a real illness, you need to go to a doctor, of course, if you don't have the expertise to deal with whatever illness or malady that you have. But a doctor is sort of for when things really go wrong. I think something that modern doctors really lament is that they typically see people who aren't taking very good care of their bodies to begin with. And they can tell their patients how to get better and how to keep their bodies in good shape all they want, but if they never really were caring about their bodies much to begin with, you see. And similarly, like psychologists are really good at using thought in order to better a person's life. I mean, that's really the essence of behaviorism. Yes, I also have a psychology BA. Behaviorism, modern psychology, is the idea that through crafting our thoughts and through changing our thoughts and how we think about things, we can then alter our emotions about them and then get the motivation to behave in the ways that we need to behave in order to have a healthy, fruitful life. And it's really effective. Here's the thing, though. Belief doesn't control Reiki. Like, Reiki is not something that you can think at and change the nature of. Reiki itself can control your beliefs, and I'll tell you how that works. So when you are feeling powerless, when you are feeling weak or vulnerable or whatever negative word pops in your head when you think of a negative energetic state, what we want is to go from that state to our good feeling state. And a lot of times people can use outside factors to try to change their feeling and change their energy in order to feel better. I mean, to a certain degree, we need to do that in order to survive, right? If you get thirsty, you need to drink water. If you get hungry, you need to eat food. But I think you kind of get what I'm saying, where sometimes people feel anxious or feel depressed or feel out of sorts and jump on social media like I do all the time, and I really shouldn't, or seek it from relationships, seek it from their spouse, and their spouse gets annoyed with them, because ultimately the power to change our vibrational state, to change our energy, comes from us. And you can use Reiki to flow into your thoughts and improve then your feelings, and then improve your body, and then improve the world. I mean, hopefully, right? That's sort of the idea. How does that work? Well, I think when it comes to the practice of Reiki, and by all means, go check out my past videos because we are getting kind of into the woods now, if you've been watching these videos. One of the things to understand is that you kind of already know how powerful your thoughts are, because a lot of times when you think a negative thought, either about your friend or your spouse or your job or whatever it is, there is an innate feeling in all of us when we have these negative thoughts of anxiety. And I think that at the heart of that anxiety is the fear that as we put out these thoughts, we are consciously or unconsciously making our world worse for us. We're sending out bad vibes and we're going to get bad stuff in return. And I think though most of us don't think about that consciously, if you look at different religious practices, they have different words for how this idea works. There's karma, there's the idea of sin, there's all these things and all these different teachings, right? So you can't go about chasing your bad thoughts and trying to suck them up and replace them with good thoughts, just like you can't stop yourself from thinking negatively. Like if you're in a bad spot, either vibrationally or physically or relationship-wise, you can't lie to yourself and say, hey, this isn't bad, you know? And Reiki doesn't encourage you to do that. Instead, what Reiki asks us to do is find a better feeling thought about what is. It invites us to use the mental framework, and I would argue the genetic framework, for the function of belief in your mind. And instead of whatever was put into your head or whatever you've dogmatically believed or whatever you're anxious about because the truth is so malleable and uncertain, instead of using the structure of belief to house all of that, evict these tenants and invite in this engine of creation that's your ability to use your energy. And that engine can then fuel new thoughts. It can fuel new dreams. It can create, through a very gradual process, if that's what it takes, a more healthy person. And that's why I truly believe it doesn't matter what religion you have or what your belief about science is. Anybody can come to Reiki and anyone can make use of it, because everyone can use a little bit of a better way to make their life feel better, whether that's physically, like we've talked about on the channel with actual Reiki sessions, or mentally by choosing to take a thought or a belief or a thought pattern and say to yourself, hey, is there a better way to go about this? So that's what I kind of think about it. So, so do you need to believe in Reiki in order for it to work? Short answer, no. Long answer, kinda. Thanks, guys.